Neodinosaurs in the Amazon. Neodinosaurs have been reported from the Amazon basin, principally Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, and Peru, since the late 19th century. Descriptions from South America are uniformly vaguer than those of the more famous neodinosaurs of Central and West Africa, and no local names for any South American neodinosaur are known. Aside from undetailed or generic reports of reptilian cryptids connected with dinosaurs only dubiously, the most common type of neodinosaur reported from the Amazon is a large, long-necked amphibious animal compared to a sauropod, followed by iguanodont-like animals, and, more rarely, bipedal reptiles compared to allosaurs. Alongside theories of mistaken identity, hoaxes, surviving dinosaurs of various kinds, and unknown species of reptile, some cryptozoologists theorize that the dinosaurian tracks reported from the Amazon, if not the neodinosaurs themselves, could be explained by surviving toxodonts. Sightings of short-necked animals likened to ornithopod dinosaurs have occasionally been reported from the Amazon, including an alleged iguanodon sighting in Colombia's Magdalena River in 1921. According to a skeptical account by Swedish naturalist Rolf Blomberg in his book Rio Amazonas, 1966, a Brazilian Indian named Alvaro Mesquita claimed to have encountered a camptosaur-like animal one night on the shore of a swampy lake between the Rio Purus and the Rio Juruá. When Mesquita missed a shot he took at the animal, which was green, bipedal, red-eyed, and larger than a cow, it fled into the lake and disappeared. Theories. Dale A. Drinan believes that South American artwork indicates the existence of a giant crested iguanid lizard, called by him the greater dragon iguana, which is capable of sitting up to the height of a human being. A similar lizard is reported from Venezuela compared to a Komodo dragon. Long-necked neodinosaurs. An early account of a bizarre long-necked neodinosaur was published in Scientific American in 1883. According to this anonymous report, a saurian was allegedly killed shortly before July 1883 on the Rio Beni, in the El Beni department of Bolivia, after being shot 36 times. It was described as
12 meters long from snout to the point of the tail, which latter is flattened. Besides the anterior head, it has 4 meters behind, 2 small but completely formed heads. They are rising from the back. All 3 have much resemblance to the head of a dog. The legs are short and end in formidable claws. The legs, belly, and lower part of the throat appear defended by a kind of scale armor, and all the back is protected by a still thicker and double cuirass, starting from behind the ears of the anterior head, and continuing to the tail. The neck is long, and the belly large and almost dragging on the ground.
Its body was dried and preserved in Asuncion before allegedly being sent to La Paz by order of the president of Bolivia Narciso Campero. Photographs of drawings of the animal were said to have been sent to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Brazil from the Brazilian minister at La Paz. Professor Golvati allegedly examined the animal, and believed it to be a member of a rare or almost lost species, as the Indians in some parts of Bolivia use small earthen vases of identical shape, and probably copied from nature. Although George Eberhard lists it as a neodinosaur, not all of its traits were saurian, and Karl Schuker describes it as an ultra-mysterious beast. Another highly detailed but suspect account of an atypical long-necked neodinosaur is alleged to have occurred in October 1907, according to the German traveler Franz Hermann Schmidt, who, alongside Captain Rudolf Pleng, was one of the principal alleged eyewitnesses. According to Schmidt, during the 12th day of his expedition to the remote swamps and valleys of Peru, he and Pleng came across huge tracks, 2 sets of different sizes, on the shore of a shallow lake formed in a valley. The following day, shortly after they discovered a muddy track on the shore, some monkeys in the nearby jungle began to shriek.
For a full 10 minutes there was silence. Then the green growth began to stir again, and coming back to the lake we beheld the frightful monster that I shall now describe. The head appeared over bushes 10 feet tall. It was about the size of a beer keg and was shaped like that of a tapir, as if the snout was used for pulling things or taking hold of them. The eyes were small and dull and set in like those of an alligator. Despite the half-dried mud, we could see that the neck, which was very snake-like, only thicker in proportion, as rough-knotted like an alligator's sides rather than his back. Evidently, the animal saw nothing odd in us, if he noticed us, and advanced till he was not more than 150 feet away. We could see part of the body, which I should judge to have been 8 or 9 feet thick at the shoulders, if that word may be used, since there were no forelegs, only some great, heavy-clawed flippers. The surface was like that of the neck. For a wonder, the Indians did not bolt, but they seemed fascinated. As far as I was concerned, I would have waited a little longer, but Fleng threw up his rifle and let drive at the head. I am sure that he struck between the eyes and that the bullet must have struck something bony, horny, or very tough, for it cut twigs from a tree higher up and further on after it glanced. I shot as Fleng shot again and aimed for the base of the neck. The animal had remained perfectly still till now. It dropped its nose to the spot at which I had aimed and seemed to bite at it, but there was no blood or any sign of real hurt. As quickly as we could fire, we pumped 7 shots into it, and I believe all struck. They seemed to annoy the creature but did not cause any injury. Suddenly it plunged forward in a silly, clumsy fashion. The Indians nearly upset the dugout getting away, and both Fleng and I missed the sight as it entered the water. I was very anxious to see its hind legs if it had any. I looked again only in time to see the last of it leave the land, a heavy blunt tail with rough horny lumps. The head was visible still, though the body was hidden by the splash. From this instant's opportunity, I should say that the creature was 35 feet long, with at least 12 of this devoted to head and neck. In 3 seconds there was nothing to be seen except the waves of the muddy water, the movements of the waterside growth, and a monkey with its hind parts useless hauling himself up a tree top. As the Indians paddled frantically away, I put a bullet through the poor thing to let it out of its misery. We had not gone 100 yards before Fleng called to me and pointed to the right. Above the water, 1/8 of a mile away, appeared the head and neck of the monster. It must have dived and gone right under us. After a few seconds' gaze, it began to swim toward us, and as our bullets seemed to have no effect, we took to flight in earnest. Losing sight of it behind an island, we did not pick it up again and were just as well pleased.
The South American explorer Percy Fawcett, known for his 1925 disappearance and for his alleged encounters with cryptids such as the giant anaconda, the Maricoxy, and the Mitla, famously reported the existence of a dinosaurian creature in Bolivia, although his association with this cryptid is frequently exaggerated or misquoted. He never claimed to have seen such an animal for himself and only mentioned second-hand discoveries of 3-toed tracks and other trails with which he associated it, but he did briefly attest to the existence of dinosaur-like animals in the Rio Guapor region of Bolivia, Brazil, in the Bolivian Madidi, and in the swamps of Acre in Brazil. Fawcett did not, as is sometimes reported, claim to have seen either a dinosaur or the tracks of a dinosaur, for himself. However, in a letter written to the Daily Mail published on December 17, 1919, Fawcett did report a sighting of a large, long-necked reptile made by a friend of his around the border of Brazil and Bolivia, while also specifying that he himself had never seen either the animal or its tracks. A friend of mine, a trader in the rivers and for whose honesty I can vouch, saw in somewhere about lat. 12s. And long 65. Width. The head and neck of a huge reptile of the character of the Brontosaurus. It was a question of who was scared most, for it precipitately withdrew, with a plunging that suggested an enormous bulk. The savages appear to be familiar with the existence and tracks of the beast, although I have never come across any of the latter myself. These swamps over immense areas are virtually impenetrable. American explorer Leonard Clark referred to Fawcett's stories in his own book The Rivers Ran East, 1954, and Clark himself received rumors of an animal like a sauropod from locals of the Rio Marano in Peru. In his introduction for that work, U.S. consular agent at Iquitos Louis Gallery claimed that the animal's existence was confirmed by many of the tribes east of the Ucayali, a region covered by Clark, also in Peru. According to a 1976 story in the Liverpool Daily Post, during the previous year, An unidentified Swiss businessman holidaying in the Amazon received an account of a large long-necked animal from a 75-year-old guide named Sebastian Bastos, who had been educated in Switzerland. According to Bastos, as transmitted through both the businessman and the Liverpool Daily Post, several years previously, he had beached his canoe by a river in dense rainforest, and was walking away when, hearing a loud noise, he turned back to see a large monster tearing his boat apart. Bastos fled, briefly looking back to see that the animal had submerged in the river. Bastos' Indian friends told him that these animals lived in deep pools in the heart of the jungle, mainly coming out onto the land during the night. The Indians, who were afraid of the animals, described them as having heads, necks, and backs of about 18 in length. The most recent recorded sighting of a long-necked neodinosaur in northern South America is alleged to have occurred in early 1995, according to contemporary media accounts. A party of geology students in eastern Brazil's Sancora Mountains allegedly glimpsed 230 animals, with huge bodies, 8 necks, fearsome heads, and 8 tails, bathing in the shallows of the Paraguaçu River, on the Arabo Plain. Carl Schuker writes that, unlike with the long-necked neodinosaurs of Central Africa, these cryptids' descriptions are usually quite vague, often more like plesiosaurs, which have also been reported from the Amazon, or even a combination of plesiosaur and sauropod. Some stories, such as the anonymous Scientific American report, are regarded as hoaxes, and while Roy P. Mackal regarded the Schmidt-Pling sighting as reliable, though no record of Schmidt himself could be found, Schuker questions how seriously the story should be taken, and notes that, again, the animal seems unable to decide whether it is a sauropod or a plesiosaur. Similarly, Schuker writes that the Bastos account contains too little detail to try to identify the animal, though Schuker points out that the Moklambembe is also said to destroy boats. Fawcett's descriptions are similarly brief, although the mention of tracks implies feet as opposed to flippers. Schuker writes that the 1995 sighting reminded him of Charles R. Knight's famous painting of submerged sauropods. According to Schuker, although such aquatic behavior is not currently supported for prehistoric sauropods by most paleontologists, it is impossible to say what adaptations a putative modern-day sauropod might not have evolved after 66 million years. According to explorer and cryptozoologist Arnošt Vosicek, a pack of small, Allosaurus-like animals was reported from one of the tributaries of the Amazon in the early 1990s. They resembled these dinosaurs in appearance, but were much smaller, and were very aggressive. A reptilian cryptid sometimes described as a neodinosaur was reported from southwestern Brazil's Marmari River in 1931. It was allegedly seen by Swedish explorer Harold Weston, who described it as being about 20 long, with an alligator-like head, 4 lizard-like feet, and a distended body that reminded him, in shape and form, of a boa constrictor. Weston approached the animal in his boat, prompting it to turn and look at him with its small, scarlet eyes, so Weston shot it. However, his bullet seemed to have no effect on the creature, which walked away unconcerned. Carl Schuker, while noting that the animal's distended body most likely resulted from it having recently eaten a large prey item, writes that the report does not contain enough details to identify the animal, although it is unlikely that Weston could have mistaken something like a caiman for such an animal. Although it has sometimes been described as a possible neodinosaur similar to the alleged Amazonian iguanodon, Schuker notes that it does not sound like a dinosaur at all. According to Harold T. Wilkins, a 1557-1558 report by Jean de Larry from Brazil described a 6-long, white mountain lizard covered in hard oyster-like shells. When confronted, the lizard retreated inland, into the mountains. Alleged tracks. Reports of large tracks frequently attributed to dinosaurs, sometimes described as being 3-toed, have come out of the Amazon from time to time, including Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. Such tracks are best known for being mentioned by Percy Fawcett, though he never saw any for himself, and gave no detailed description of them. The northernmost discovery of such a tract to be associated with neodinosaurs occurred in the Yucatan Peninsula of Central America, where according to Harold T. Wilkins, archaeologist Thomas Gann discovered tracks that he believed were made by an iguanodon. However, unidentified three-toed tracks have been found on other continents, including North America and Africa. Dale A. Drinan theorizes that these three-toed dinosaurian tracks are probably the tracks of persisting a toxodon, or a related genus of toxodont, which had only 3 relatively short toes on each foot. According to Drinan's theory, these putative surviving toxodon must have a wide range, and, whatever their origin, Drinan recorded accounts of three-toed tracks found all over Brazil and Colombia and into fairly high altitudes in Bolivia and Peru, as well as in Ecuador. Further south, Drinan also points to stories of water bulls as evidence for late toxodon survival. In popular culture, Arthur Conan Doyle's 1912 novel The Lost World features a Brazilian plateau on which dinosaurs, including Megalosaurus and Iguanodon, still survive. Inspiration for the story is said to have come from Percy Fawcett, who showed Doyle photographs of certain South American plateaus, suggesting that monsters from the dawn of man's existence might still roam these heights unchallenged, imprisoned and protected by unscalable cliffs. Film and television adaptations of The Lost World have been released in 1925, 1960, and 1992, twice in 1998, 1999 to 2002, 2001, and 2005. The Lost World and its adaptations have in turn served as youthful inspiration for a number of cryptozoologists, including Bernard Heuvelmans and Bill Gibbons.